Hi everyone. The relationship between the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church, ever since the split in 1054 AD, has been, conflicting, confusing, and sometimes rather tumultuous, and not often violent, though there have been certain times where violence did raise its ugly head. This was particularly true on the holy mountain of Athos, that primary and fecund area of Orthodox spirituality and monasticism for many, many years. Now, in the middle of the 10th century, there were a number of monks from Georgia who began to settle there and eventually built a monastery that is now named Iveron. And on May 13th, we celebrate the memory of monastics who perished for the sake of the Orthodox faith at the hands of Roman Catholics. Now, as I said, it was a very confusing time, and in the 13th century, probably starting from about the middle, there were attempts by the Orthodox and the Roman Catholics to unite for the sake of political expediency against common enemies. The Second Council of Lyon in 1274 tried to seal the deal on this under the Emperor Michael Palaiologos VIII. Well, at that time, John Bekos was appointed Patriarch of Constantinople, who was very pro-union, and it caused all kinds of issues within Orthodoxy, especially on Mount Athos. Now, there were times at different monasteries like Zographou, Vatopedi, the Church of the Prototon, and others on Athos that were greatly persecuted by the Crusaders coming through and insisting that the Orthodox at that point in time convert to Roman Catholicism. All of these have their own entries in the Synaxarion of the Orthodox Church. But again, today we focus on the Georgian and Greek monks, because Greeks were also there, although the Georgians were predominant, and there were many younger Georgian ascetics who were coming to this particular monastery, to the monastery of Iveron. Now, we don't know the exact dates of this. Some say 1259, but most likely it was after the Council of Lyon, which would have been about 1276 to 1279, when, again, the Latins came to Iveron and demanded that all of the monks there convert to Catholicism. Well, the monks, of course, refused. They proclaimed the Latin errors in the faith, and they even drew up a document condemning them for this. Well, the Catholics were not too happy about all of this, as you can imagine, and following in the footsteps of their predecessors who had already been ravaging Athos for a long period of time, they expelled the monks from Iveron in a really brutal way. There were around 200 of the older monks who were put into a ship, sent out into the harbor, and drowned there. The ship was sunk. In fact, it even talks in the Apologetikion for these particular monks on this particular day of May 13th that they were taken into the harbor and drowned, but thereby found safe harbor with Christ. The other monks, the younger, stronger ones, were taken captive into Italy and sold as slaves. So it began and concluded another chapter of the brutalization of the Orthodox by the Latins at that time. Now, even in our day, there are talks about union for political expediency, although some say perhaps not union, but let's just get together on things that we can agree upon because of the current condition and deterioration of the culture around us. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. In fact, I think it has many, many good points. But union, as the fathers of the church have always said, has to start with agreement in faith, that there is no negotiation involved, that we have to be in full agreement in order to share the Holy Eucharist. The Roman Catholic Church in the past, although there have been many notable and good people in that church who know nothing else but Catholicism their entire lives and their families going back generations, even though that is the case, there has been an idea of forced union simply to agree on what both sides would consider common denominators. Well, we agree this, that, and the other, and therefore we might as well get together for the sake of the unity of Christianity. However, this is certainly not the unity that the Lord would have envisioned, because he knew that the faith that he established was Eucharistically oriented, and his prayer was that they all might be one. One means unity in heart, mind, soul, and particularly in doctrine. The Latins, of course, at that time, it was a different age. It was the age of the Crusades. It was the age of papal armies, things like this, that were trying to use their force in order to impose their will upon the Byzantines, who were increasingly at odds with their neighbors and under a great deal of stress to protect the empire. We didn't live then, so we can't really judge them according to what we might think is the best thing now, which is true for a lot of different topics these days. But we don't judge them. We don't condemn them for this. But we also understand that the steps that they took were not in accordance with the Orthodox faith. And unfortunately, for many of the monastics on Mount Athos, they had to suffer accordingly. I do say unfortunately that they had to suffer, but then again, their suffering has wrought them crowns of heaven that perhaps we can only dream of achieving one day. But we need to keep all these things in mind when understanding that there were many monks in the Orthodox Church and many lay people too as well back in that day who were willing to sacrifice everything for the purity of the Orthodox faith. May it be so with us today as we go forth in our proclamation of the holy faith given to the saints once and for all by our Lord Jesus Christ.